पुतिन निकलवाना चाहता था मैक्रोन के मुंह से कि भाई बोल, तू यहाँ क्यों आया है, तू मेरे से क्या मांगना चाहता है. You would recall a picture of Macron sitting with Putin 6 meters apart. What was the signal that Putin was trying to give? As good Indians we say, ठीक है, इंडिया आज़ाद हो गया तो सारी दुनिया आज़ाद हो गई. नहीं, मगर अफ्रीका अभी तक आज़ाद नहीं.
They're still under control of France?
They are still under control of France. And that is what Putin wants Macron to say. You heard of the Wagner forces. They were mercenaries. They came into Russia and everybody said, oh, the mercenaries have come back to Russia. If you're coming back to Russia, you have come from somewhere. Where did you come from?
Russia-Ukraine war has extended now 4 years. This you're talking it will not extend. I mean, very different types of wars, right?
Yes. There's something fun that I try to figure. Like I said, Macron was the last big leader to have visited Putin just before the war started. Yeah, I think 27th Feb or something, and just a week or 10 days prior. Now, you would recall a picture of Macron sitting with Putin on a table, just the two of them, 6 meters apart. I was thinking, you see Trump sitting with Zelensky?
Correct.
How do they sit? Closer
Next to each other.
Closer than we are sitting.
Correct.
Yeah? So he's sitting here and he's sitting here and you're whispering into each other's ears. That's how world leaders are many times talking. Modi, Trump. When Modi tapped Trump on his hand, you could hear the pataka. But a 6 meter distance from Putin to Macron, what was the signal that Putin was trying to give? My reading to that is he was wanting France to say out loud what they wanted to say, which France could never have said out loud. Now, what would that be? Just 4, 5, 6 months into the war, you heard of the Wagner forces, and you heard that Wagner forces, which are mercenaries,
Correct,
have come back to Russia. Where did they come from? They were mercenaries. They came into Russia, and everybody said, "Oh, the mercenaries have come back to Russia." If you're coming back to Russia, you would have come from somewhere. Yeah. Where did you come from? So the Wagner forces came from Africa. In Africa, you have 13 countries in a row, right? The Central African region. And these are Francophone countries, countries that speak French. And also there was something very peculiar about these 13 countries. They use a currency called the Central African franc. Franc is a currency which is no more in vogue, even in France. But that is a currency which is being used in these African countries till date. We speak about colonies. And as Indians, as good Indians, we say, ठीक है, इंडिया आज़ाद हो गया तो सारी दुनिया आज़ाद हो गई. नहीं. और जो बाकी दुनिया आज़ाद होनी रह गई थी, वो साउथ अफ्रीका जब आज़ाद हुआ तो हमारे लिए सारी दुनिया आज़ाद हो गई. मगर अफ्रीका अभी तक आज़ाद नहीं हुआ.
They're still under control of France?
They are still under control of France. And that is what is called neocolonialism. We are not talking about it, and that is what Putin wants Macron to say. Putin निकलवाना चाहता था मैक्रोन के मुंह से कि भाई बोल, तू यहाँ क्यों आया है, तू मेरे से क्या मांगना चाहता है. 6 मीटर दूर से बोल, जिससे दुनिया सुने. मेरे कान में मत बोल, 6 मीटर दूर से मेरे को बता और दुनिया को बता कि तू क्या कहना चाहता है. France wanted this war to happen immediately after Macron went back because he could not get from Putin what he wanted. What had happened was in these 13 countries which use the Central African franc, पहले इनकी एक पॉलिसी थी कि फ्रैंक, ये सारी की सारी फ्रेंच कॉलोनीज थी. फ्रांस नेवर रियली लेफ्ट. ओके, इन कंट्रीज के अंदर जो बैंक्स थे वो सारे के सारे किसी ज़माने में फ्रेंच ओन थे. पूरा बोर्ड जो होता था, जो नेशनल बैंक होता था, उसका पूरा बोर्ड फ्रेंच होता था. फिर उन्होंने कहा चलो ठीक है, ज़माना बदल रहा है, वी आर अंडर स्क्रूटनी. तो उन्होंने बोला चलो ठीक है, सारे नहीं, बट स्टिल आवर रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स विल सिट इन दीज बैंक्स. एंड देन दे pegged the currency of all these countries. The Central African franc was pegged to the franc of France. A fixed currency. So it doesn't matter where the inflation is leading you. Correct. Your currency is fixed. तो कल अगर पाकिस्तान की तरह तुम भिखारी भी हो जाओ, your currency is still not going to change because it's
pegged to franc.
Pegged to franc. When the franc went out, they continued the same arrangement with the euro and extended that benefit to the entire eurozone. UK निकल गया, बाकी सारे. Correct. The strongest country was France, and next industrial power was Germany. They made use of it. Russia was threatening that power. 3 countries went independent. Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. Done by who? Wagner forces.
Oh.
Okay? And that is what Macron had gone to Moscow to ask for. Spare me. Because one out of these three countries, called Niger, supplies almost 40% of uranium that France needs for its nuclear powers. A country which is not dependent on oil for its energy needs, but is dependent on uranium, suddenly has a source of uranium off the map.
I'm just trying to understand how complicated
It
geopolitics is.
it is complicated and nobody is talking about it. The whole world is
Yeah,
silent.
like I've never heard
Like
about this.
you
what
hear
tell me.
of the French and you say, "Oh, so liberal," and the kind of things they throw on our faces, liberties, freedom of speech, and you are still a colonizer, and we have no idea. We don't even speak of it, and that is what Putin was poking him for. बोल भाई दुनिया को बता तू है कौन?
Wow, it's so complex and interesting to understand
It's,
geopolitics.
it's it's just the dots, and they were blipping. So I just took this detour, and I've forgotten where I picked it up from.
Even I forgot what was the question, but no, it was very interesting.
We were talking about the Ukraine thing.
Ukraine and Russia war,
but
yeah.
So yes, that war is very different because it's a complex war. It's a complex war. A country which was giving 60% of the supplies of gas to Europe suddenly lost it all to US. US was earlier giving around 20% of gas to Europe. Today is 65. So there is now, and that is where the trickiest part is, like, you are by profession much more knowledgeable about things like petrodollars and everything. I see it slight bit differently. I mean, not the economy part of it. Petrodollars, fine, it has its power. But look at it today, not just petrodollars. The entire petrol, the entire fuel. You have Venezuela in your pocket. Russia is tied up with what it is tied up, the second largest producer.
Iran,
And
you have
after
now.
that is the Middle East.
Middle East. Iran is one of the highest producers.
Iran is one of the highest producers of gas.
Correct.
And the GCC countries,
Correct.
they were
Saudi.
all already under the thumb of the US,
US.
with all the bases sitting in there.
Yeah.
So now you don't just control the petrodollar, you actually physically control the resources. And if tomorrow Iran falls, you will also be controlling the logistical routes to it.